So,
Okay, so today's holiday is going to be Flag Day.
Taking these tips. Often that he wasn't going to be stopped until we got him arrested.
Was he following this coverage feverishly, or was he just so laser focused on this spree that he didn't even bother to watch the news and see if he was out there? Because it's not as if he wasn't recognizable. He wasn't even trying to hide his face.
Police found it hard to believe that Philip didn't know that his picture was being splashed all over the media. Maybe he did know, but just couldn't stop it.
We are dealing with a serial, predatory robber at least, and potentially, if the victims fight back, they could end up dead.
The friend who placed the Craigslist ad for murder victim Julissa Brisman supplies key evidence, an email from the presumed killer. A digital investigative team begins the search for an IP address.
IP stands for Internet Protocol, and that is the Internet Protocol that everything on the Internet, all the communications, uses to communicate between computers. You have a tracker on you all the time, and it's being tracked all the time. It's recording what you do and where you are when you do it.
But they didn't know where to find him. But by serving a subpoena to his internet service provider, they were finally able to get the address they needed.
Police trace the digital breadcrumbs that lead to 8 High Point Circle, the apartment that Philip Markoff and his fiancée Megan McAllister share on the 3rd floor.
We have our man, essentially.
We got 8 High Point Circle pinpointed as the address, and Philip Markov is a potential suspect.
We're going to stake the place out. I want to wait for the suspect to come in and out of the building, get a visual verification he's our guy.
If Philip Markov is a short guy with a big beard, we got a problem.
Right.
For a techie, yeah, he was a digital idiot. He was trying to evade, but he didn't know enough about it to evade successfully.
The emails to robbery victim Trisha and murder victim Julissa come from the same IP address through a Yahoo website.
On April 19, 2009, police follow Philip and Megan while they shop at BJ's Wholesale Club in nearby Dedham, Massachusetts.
You would think that Philip would be laying low, hiding, maybe even fleeing the area. But no, he was shopping with Megan, and police had a clever way to get more information.
We recovered physical evidence from the cart that they pushed, and we were taking DNA samples and fingerprint samples off anything that they touched.
But we did have fingerprints from the Western Hotel robbery of Trisha.
He had put that duct tape on her mouth without using a glove, and so he had left a fingerprint on it.
Later that day, Megan and Philip agree that they need some rest and relaxation.
So the two of them pack an overnight bag and decide to head to their favorite casino in Connecticut.
Police have been staking out the apartment for hours when they see the couple leaving.
Foxwood Casinos? What a way to start the week.
When he leaves his apartment with suitcases and he and Megan get in the car, we're really faced with a critical moment here because we don't want him leaving Massachusetts.
Undercover police hail Megan and Philip's car as they head south on the interstate.
Around the same time, Trisha Leffler positively IDs Philip based on his Boston University student ID.
She said that she was 1,000,000% certain that it was Markoff, but also gave us the kind of comfort level to continue pursuing him as a suspect.
And then at that point, he decided to turn on the lights and pull him over. It turns out that the couple was just on their way to a casino. They had no idea that the police were after them.
At the traffic stop, Philip agrees to return to Boston for questioning. Police impound his car. They are purposely vague about why he's been stopped.
We had every intention of arresting him, that day and charging him with these crimes. He was kind of cool as a cucumber. I mean, he really didn't react, in a way that would imply guilt right off the bat. That's for sure.
Philip didn't even ask the police what's going on. And
We let that set and absorb.
Off is taken off suicide watch, but he still has death on his mind.
Philip made a primitive scalpel out of a ballpoint pen and cut his arteries in a way that a medical student would know would lead to death. In his own blood, on his cell wall, he wrote the words Megan and Pocket. It would have been their 1-year wedding anniversary.
He had a really good knowledge of medical procedures, and he was able to commit this act against himself without anybody knowing.
He stuffs toilet paper into his mouth to prevent resuscitation and places a plastic bag over his head and another over his feet to keep the blood contained and hidden from guards.
He did not want anybody bringing him back to life.
In the morning, when they came in, it was way past where you could actually do anything to save him. So he was very intent on committing this act.
A story that had already just taken so many strange twists and turns and now taken the ultimate twist. Philip Markov had killed himself.
And all the time, from the moment he was arrested all the way to the time he took his own life, he never did confess or admit his involvement in any of this.
Philip Markov denies the victims and the family of Julissa Brisman their day in court. There will be no trial, no prison sentence, no justice.
As a prosecutor, I do know that had this case gone to trial, there is no doubt whatsoever in my mind that we would have convicted him of murder in the first degree, and he'd be spending the rest of his natural life in prison.
Markov takes his twisted motives with him to the grave.
How can a promising young medical student turn out to be a stone-cold killer? Was this just a robbery gone bad, or was there a sexual thrill? We'll never know because Philip took all the answers to the grave with him. He never spoke out publicly except to plead not guilty.
We'll never know what was really in the mind of Philip Markov. One can only speculate at this point, and you can only guess to yourself if somebody is willing to go to the trouble to get a gun, to get zip ties, to steal underwear from his victims, that he's doing it for the thrill of it, not just for the profit.
He was a classic addict where he was addicted to sex. He was addicted to gambling. He was addicted to the adventure. Nothing was ever enough until it became fatal for one young woman.
After this case and others, Craigslist made changes to their website, but they still connect strangers for online sexual encounters, and the pressure is on for them to change things even more.
Soon after the suicide, Julissa Brisman's mother presents a photo of her daughter from a high school trip.
And the photo she presented of Julissa was one that the media hadn't seen yet. You know, this was nothing like the seductive young woman staring into the camera with this message from the dark side there is. A sunburnt girl on a school trip to Cuba, beaming into the camera, just a happy teenager. That's what her mother wanted to project to the world. This is my Julissa.
This program contains graphic violence and sexual situations. Viewer discretion is advised. A beautiful young medical student is missing.
As a family, it was devastating. This is your baby sister who you were so proud of.
The wife of one of the heirs to a very rich and powerful New York City real estate empire.
The Durst family was arguably one of the 5 most powerful families in New York.
Can I help you?
Yes, I'm here to report my wife missing.
But instead of making front page news, the story is buried. The case turns cold, and her life is forgotten.
Kathy told all of us, if anything ever happens to me, look to Bob. Bob did it. Don't let him get away with it.
This was a cold case for almost 20 years, but it came roaring back into the headlines because truth was stranger than fiction.
Her husband's close friend and confidant, a Hollywood writer, is brutally murdered, possibly for knowing too much. The next victim is a loner turned friend who ends up in pieces floating in the bay of Galveston, Texas.
He is your modern day Hannibal Lecter. He's rich. He could be anyone. He could be anywhere. He's a frightening individual.
After a shocking verdict, Hollywood comes knocking when the press catapults this bizarre murderer into the public eye. And a stunning confession is unknowingly made on camera.
What did I do? Killed them all.
Meet Robert Durst, affluent, resentful son, and a killer hiding in plain view. Until murder made him famous. Acquitted for one murder, suspected of another, and rumored to be responsible for the disappearance of his wife, Robert Durst is a figure in which the media is obsessed. Numerous books and countless articles detail the horrifying crimes that he's tied to. A feature film
Now we let our
dramatized
foundation
the
set.
story for theater goers.
Hey, stay with me.
It's unprecedented.
Okay, we deserve it.
first year of their relationship started off with, you know, two people heads over heels in love with each other.
They wanted to be hippies and live up in Vermont and do the hippie thing, and there was no issues with money or anything like that. And they'd be happy in the woods.
We get a little cat, maybe a boat. I want a puppy.
He was Prince Charming, she was Cinderella. She was very naive to all of that prosperity that relationship brought.
But Seymour Durst, Robert's father, wants him to return to New York to help run the family business.
I need to know that the company's going to be taken care of. By you.
That's your business, Dad.
He just wanted to have his rich hippie lifestyle, beautiful wife, and a joint every day. That seemed to be his focus.
I have my own ideas. I don't know if I want to run your business.
I don't plan on continuing to pay for you to live in the woods. Grow up.
Upon returning to New York, Robert and Kathy have their entire futures ahead of them. But what they envision is very different.
He was very clear. If Kathy married him, they weren't going to have kids together.
I know I wouldn't be a good father. No kids. Period.
According to Robert, Kathy agrees to this, and they marry in a small ceremony in April 1973. As their married life begins, Robert gets to know Kathy's family, but he shows little interest in his new relatives.
Kathy Durst's friends used to describe him as sullen and uppity. I only met Robert once. He didn't even really say hello, welcome to my house. He just grunted, you know, like a dog. My dog is nicer.
Robert spends his time collecting rent from Durst's tenants in some of the more seedy parts of New York.
They would be renting to brothels, porn shops.
Hey, baby, looking for a good time? Yeah.
While Kathy spends her time studying for medical school. But in 1976, Kathy accidentally gets pregnant.
I want to keep the baby.
Absolutely not. Robert, no. I told you from the beginning I didn't want you. You agreed. And so I married you. I gave you this great life, and now you want to change the rules.
He demanded that she get an abortion.
Make me do this.
Fine. Okay, then you're going to say goodbye. Our marriage. I love you.
I would consider that Kathy turned a corner in her own life, emotionally and mentally.
The fact that Robert would force Kathy to have an abortion confirmed her worst fears about it. This was a guy who didn't care about what she wanted or any of her hopes and dreams. It was all about Robert.
Mrs. Durst, could you come with me, please?
Robert and Kathy's marriage deteriorates over the years and frequently results in violence.
He was physically abusive to Kathy Durst. There are lots of witness accounts on that.
Robert doesn't even attempt to hide the abuse from Kathy's own family.
The McCoy family would typically have a Christmas event at Mom's house. And Kathy came with Bob to one of these parties in the late 70s.
Kathy, would you want to leave?
No. I want to stay.
I'm going to go stop.
How's medical school going?
Good.
Very quickly. He came back almost like a man dashed through a rush.
I said no.
And I'm sitting there with a beer in my hand. And it was just as quickly as I'm telling you the story, they were already to the door and going out. I didn't react quickly, but there was a lot of people who said, why didn't you get up and beat him up? I go, you don't understand. It happened so sudden, unexpected. Who goes over to someone, puts him by the hair to get them to leave?
And by all accounts, the abuse just got worse and worse.
Despite this, Kathy stays with Robert.
People get stuck. And I think she hoped that she was going to work it out. That somehow she was going to change it.
The only person who seems to understand Robert is Susan Berman, a friend from his college days at UCLA.
She was Bobby's confidant. She was Bobby's best friend.
In 1981, Robert throws Susan a party to celebrate the release of her memoir.
Susan Berman grew up a mob princess, and in many ways, she had a lot of things in common with Robert Durst. They had these larger-than-life fathers. Their mothers died under mysterious circumstances at an early age. It was like these tragedies kind of connected the two.
Do you ever wonder about those two?
Bobby's they're strictly platonic over them. Like Susan always says, Bobby's the older brother that she never had. They seem like a real loyalty to each other. You know?
While Kathy doesn't have to worry about a romantic relationship.
Okay, and that's your
between Robert
Friday
and
look.
Susan,
Tune back
affairs
later,
between
and
her
I will be
husband
doing
and
a
other
look for the
women
drag
are
show. I'll be
another
doing a
story.
lesbian pride flag. Thank you.